Okay, everyone. Thanks for everyone joining so far. I think we'll get started now and get into today's topic. So thanks for joining and welcome to SlashData's new webinar edition, presenting the results for the latest Developer Program Leaders survey. This event or presentation was going to be part of our biannual event, the Future Developer Summit. For those that are not familiar, it's a fantastic event that brings together like-minded professionals or leaders in DevRel, marketing, and product to exchange experiences and learn from each other on how to build developer-facing strategies. The event was meant to be held the beginning of this month. However, naturally, it was postponed till at least October, but we will keep you posted and you'll hear from us on how that will progress. Today, we have with me our Senior Director of Research, the one basically responsible for everything you might be reading from time to time if you're subscribed to any of our studies or if you've downloaded some of our reports from the site, Christina Voskoglu. My name is Moskula and I run client relations here at SlashData. I will be your MC for today. To offer a bit of background for those that are not familiar of who we are and what we do, and of course to get to know where the data you are about to see comes from, we'll go into that first. SlashData is a developer analyst firm. In other words, we are hyper-focused on helping top tech companies understand developers. We are here to help you get the data to support your decision-making and strategy building for developer audiences. Through our wide-reaching global developer surveys, we get to know firstly who developers are. Everything from population sizing to skill sets, language and technology mindshare, and segmentations. We explore why they buy, digging into what products or platforms they're using, why, and what you can do to affect or improve or solidify your position in that competitive landscape. And lastly, where they are going. As always, building data-backed identification and forecasting of trends on the horizon, especially within these emerging areas. Before I pass on to for you to listen to the rest of the presentation with my colleague, I want to let you know we will allow 15 minutes at the end of the presentation for questions. To place your questions, please find and click that Q&A box on the Zoho window. We might not be able to get to all the questions. We will do our best, however, and if we don't, we will contact you and we will get to you for sure. I'm positive we will get to you, just trying to throw that out there. Anyway, all right, with that, Christina, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Okay, thank you, Moskula. Welcome, everyone. Excuse me, happy to have you here today with us. So before we dive into the data and insights, just quickly some facts about what we do for those of you who are not familiar with our work. So what we do is that we run 2 developer surveys annually. We have run 18 of those to date, and we reach more than 30K developers in that way on an annual basis. We firmly believe that they are a representative sample of the developer population out there, as we reach more than 160 countries and communities of all sizes. We use more than 70 partners and channels to reach developers from small local meetups to large vendor communities. And the research that we produce based on this data is consumed by more than 10 companies who are among the top 100 global tech firms. What we look into, the development areas that we look into, there are 10 of them. What you see here on the left, so mobile, desktop, web, cloud, industrial IoT, and consumer electronics as part of IoT, games, augmented and virtual reality, machine learning, data science, and apps extensions for third-party ecosystems, such as voice platforms or CRM systems. These are development areas. They're not distinct developer audiences, so they're not distinct people. In fact, we find that developers spread their activities across more than 2, typically, of these sectors. So more than half of them are active in at least 2 of those. And that's why we run a single survey covering all of those. So in each survey that we run, all of those are represented because we want to capture the full activity of a developer across all these areas, because what they do in one sector does affect what they do in another. Right, so this is what we do on the developer side. These are the key stats from our latest wave, the 18th one, where we reached 17,000 developers across 159 countries. And this is just, of course, I cannot put all 159 countries on the map. So just a small sample, just to give you an idea, and the percentages, so the spread of our sample across all the regions. And as you can see, all are represented: North America to East Asia, and Western and Eastern Europe down to South America and Oceania, they're all there. Now, but today we're mostly going to focus not on the developer data that we have, but on a different set of data. So we also run what we call a Developer Program Leaders survey, and we have run 4 of those. So today we'll be looking at the results out of the 4th one. This is addressed to Developer Program Leaders, as the name suggests. And it's a small sample this time. This time we reached 96 of them. It ran for 8 weeks between February and April. And as you can see here, we reached several roles. So it's diversity of roles in a sample. So it's not too much bias on what, say, executives do or what juniors do. So you can see we have VPs and directors down to analysts and product managers. So it's a good mix. All right, and what we will be discussing today, well, based on those results I just showed you, we are going to touch on 4 topics related to developer programs. First of all, the size of developer programs. So is it the big guys in the industry that have a program, or is it just about everybody? And those who are into it, what do they do exactly all day? So that's the first topic. Then we'll be looking into budget and effort investment. How is budget and effort distributed across different activities, and whether that allocation of investment is in the right direction based on what developers expect. So in this one, we'll be looking also in some developer data. Then on how you justify having a developer program to begin with, and once you have one, how do you measure its success? And last but not least, we're going to briefly discuss if people actually segment their developer audience and whether you should be doing so regionally or otherwise. And as Musfula said, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. All right, so let's go. About the size of developer programs. So we use 3 different ways in measuring sizes. One is number of distinct products that companies have. The other is the headcount of developer marketing, dev relations, and tooling teams. And the third, of course, is the money. Okay, so developer program budgets. And therefore, what you can see, I think the first thing that strikes you looking at this picture here is that in all 3 graphs here, the spikes, so the most popular answers, are on the low side, not the high side. So not all developer programs are huge, if that's what you thought. So if you're small or under budgeted, well, you're not alone. There are many of them. And so just look at the medians there that we have in those blue bubbles there for you. Basically means that more than 50% actually are up to 10, have up to 10 developer products. And then so the median size of, in terms of FTE headcount is 11 to 25 employees. And then in terms of budget, it's below 1 million by far. So 50% have up to $500,000 budget for a developer program. Now, the interesting thing to note here is that we are beginning to see some maturity, and we'll observe that through my presentation further on as well. So as I said, we have been doing this for a while, and we keep observing these distributions shifting to the left, which means more and more companies with smaller headcounts and limited budgets and limited number of products are in fact seeing the need to come up with a developer program to go with their products, however small. So that means that this is not the arena of just the big guys, and therefore that's how you should see it, as part of your offering, not just something that the big guys do to create a large community or other. A similar picture for the budgets. Again, it was slightly shifted more to the left, in line with shifting more to the left for distinct number of products. And so it means that some smaller companies are joining the game. All right, so they are having a development program. So what do they do all day, guys? So we actually, these are the activities behind the scenes. These are not the developer-facing activities. We will get to those in a second. But first of all, I wanted to discuss what developer program leaders do with their time. So this is about the tasks of your teams, running campaigns and creating content and all that stuff, coming up with a strategy, not the developer-facing activities such as training or tutorials or documentations. We'll look into those in a second. So we offered 11 options to our survey takers. Here I'm showing you the top 5. And as you can see at the top, we have events and otherwise web presence and direct engagement. So it's quite important, it seems, that a lot of time goes, and again, this is expressed in terms of time, attention, money, effort, goes into web presence and direct contact somehow with the developers. And these kind of activities have higher priority than other marketing activities, such as running campaigns, which is, however, in the top 5, but other activities are not, such as creating marketing content or SEO. We did ask about those, but they're not at the top of the list, as you see. Developer strategy is within the top 5. It's not at the very top because, as I showed you, we have a number of different roles taking the survey. So not everybody is working on strategy, therefore it could not be really high up. So that's an activity that really concerns the top level executive. So that sort of makes sense. All right, and then we also asked them in what kind of developer-facing activities this time they spend their budget and their effort. And here I'm showing you both budget and effort. Now, we ask both program leaders and our developers in the developer economic survey about 20 different attributes, as we call them, of programs, if you prefer, services on top of your raw product kind of thing. Here I'm not showing you all 20, it will hardly be legible, but I'm showing you those activities in which there's a significant difference between budget spent and effort spent. And you can see there's different focus. Budget goes into, money goes in different things and effort goes in different things. So the money really goes in all the activities that are closer to the product itself, let's say. So number 1 is tooling, right? Integrations, libraries, and so on. And number 2 is actually conferences. So everything that has to do, and then hands-on labs and training courses. So things that have to do with the product itself or have direct physical engagement with the developers. While effort goes into all the supportive activities and everything that is really online. So supportive activities like documentation and sample code, tutorials and how-to videos, webinars, answers in forums, whether public or official. So there is a difference. Now, well, if you're like me, you're tired, I guess, of hearing about the COVID-19 word, but here it is. So the good news thing is that things that you cannot do anymore are the things that take most of your budget. So you can start spending your money somewhere else, but you still need to put effort in all the things that you can still do, like webinars and so on, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so that's what the program leaders do, the question is, how does that align with what developers actually want? Right, so what am I showing you here? Other than a bunch of dots, it's really the effort. It's a ranking, the priority of activities. On the vertical is the priority that developer leaders place on these activities, the 20 that I just discussed. And the horizontal axis is the priority that developers place on these same activities. So top left is high priority for both groups, and then bottom or otherwise right is low priority. Bottom is low priority for dev program leaders, right is low priority for developers. So what you really want, the best outcome, is to have all those dots on the diagonal. That would mean perfect alignment between developer expectations and developer leader activities. So the good news is that as we have been drawing this map here for a few times now, we see that it's getting better. So alignment is in fact improving, which is good news. It means that developer programs are actually listening to what developers want and are being aligned. Especially the core features, as we call them, so the most important ones. So top left, they are on the ones that are top left, on the left for the developers, are also at the top for developer program leaders. So documentation and sample code, tooling and tutorials, these are really important, and it's good to see that they're equally important when it comes to effort invested on the part of developer program leaders. However, there are a few activities that are still overrated. So conferences, look at the top right corner, that's where I'm looking. So conferences and otherwise broadcasted information through newsletters, blogs, and so on, social media, and meetups even. So on the far right corner, what we have is activities that developers don't care much about. So we have 20, as I said, activities or attributes overall, and these 3, along with others further down, are 15 or below, while they rank above average, so above 10 for the developer program leaders, right? So in short, developer programs place far too much importance and effort into these activities. So again, these days where conferences cannot happen, it's not the end of the world for developers. That's what this says. And it saves you some money to do something else. So that's the good news. On the other hand, on the bottom left corner, which thankfully is pretty empty, we would have all the activities that the developers actually value. It would be in their high ranking, but developer programs don't actually invest in. Now, we don't have anything right at the corner, which is very good. The ones that are borderline, neglected, and we have seen this again and again, are answers in public forums. We cannot stress enough how you should be investing in providing answers in public forums. You can see that's among the top 5 of developers, yet it's below 10, ranks below 10 for developer programs. That's where developers are. That's where they're seeking information, and that's where you should be offering that information. As you can see, official forums is lower in priority for developers, so it should be public forums where you should be mostly. Okay, so that gives you an idea. I hope I've explained enough how to use this map here of what is important and where you should be really placing your money. However, this investment chart may change these days, may get disrupted due to the whole situation. And therefore, we are trying to track that. And we have a poll out there. If you have not answered it already, we kindly ask that you do. There's a link here, but don't bother with it right now. It will be in your deck when we send it through. We want to understand which one of these these 20 activities, not all 20, but a good subset of them, have been affected for you, what sort of changes you're making to the situation. And then, of course, we will also be asking developers what they need, how their needs have changed, how their activities have changed, especially about events. What do they want to see instead of a live conference? How they're going to go about networking. And so we're going to be combining this information and offer you more insight about that. So if you fill in this poll, we will be sending you the results on this question. So please go ahead and do that when it's convenient. All right, moving on to the next topic of how you justify and how you measure the success of a developer program. Here I'm showing you the results out of 3 latest surveys to see how things have changed over time. These are not huge sample sizes, so there's some instability, but there is some trend to talk about. First of all, there's a good chunk of people who are struggling to find the right arguments. It's good to see that that number is dropping. It's currently at 14%. There are others who take the benefit of a program for granted. I'm not sure if that's good news or bad, but you shouldn't, I think, ever be taking something for granted unless you have the numbers to support it. Could be that we're just data geeks here, which we are in SlashData, but it's our strong belief that we should be taking data-backed decisions. And exactly for that reason, I consider it a good thing that qualitative argumentation is also dropping. It's currently at 24%. But unfortunately, at least the number of people who are using a calculated gain per developer is still not big. And in fact, the indirect one is actually dropping. It's currently at 15%. Another 13% are using a direct dollar gain per developer. So by direct, we mean things like, sales, direct sales to developers, product sales. Indirect could be through developers that you have developing apps for your platform, and therefore increasing the popularity of your platform that way. More than half is another key thing here. Consider a developer program as a core part of development investment. So that's a good thing on one hand, because of course, when you have a product, people realize, more than half realize, that you also need a community around it to keep it going. On the other hand, we still believe you should be able to measure that somehow. Because fine, this will get you as far as saying that yes, we do need a developer program, but it won't help you understanding how big a program you need, how much, you need to invest into building one, and where this investment should go. So that's where data comes in, really. So we asked, therefore, the practitioners to tell us how they estimate and how much actually they estimate the marginal lifetime gain of an onboarded developer to be. Disregard the orange columns for a second, just focus on the blue ones, which is everybody, so all respondents, and that 34% there, which means that 1 in 3 actually don't know what's the value of an onboarded developer. I think that's a bit of a problem. As I said, you need to know the return on your investment, and therefore be calculating a value for each one of the developers you manage to onboard is key for that. And other than not knowing or not telling us, the estimates are all over the place. From less than 200 to more than 50K, there's nothing that stands out across all leaders, which means they have no clue. It's just that maybe then it's the 34% are just being more direct, I guess, more honest in a sense. Then if we just take those who say, remember, some told us here that they calculate dollar gain per developer, or directly or indirectly, these first 2 options here. So out of them, now they have a better idea They seem to agree, at least 40% of them agree. They have a far lower don't know, just 10%, and 40% of them agree that the value is between $200 and $1,000. Mind you, that's a lot lower than what we observed in previous surveys, which again goes with having more developed programs within smaller companies. Perhaps that's one explanation, or otherwise it's just that estimates really vary wildly between roles and so on. So that's about the gain. We do think you should be able to calculate. It is important, if not for having a program in place, but being able to size it. How big should it be, your investment that is, and what this investment should be on what activities. Okay, and then we also asked them how they measure the performance of their program, so their KPIs, and we asked them not in general but for 3 different types of activities of investments, so on developer relations, on developer marketing, and developer tooling. I'm just showing you the top 5 because we offered 16 options in total, so 16 KPIs that they could select. For developer tooling, well, I'm not showing it here. It's mostly about product usage. So the KPIs they favored had to do with GitHub activities and SDK downloads and so on. And that's, you could say it's pretty obvious. What may not be so obvious is if there's a difference between the KPIs used by developer relations teams as compared to dev marketing teams. And I'm showing you just that right now, but before going to it, just notice here that all the percentages are quite high. So you have above 50%. Of course, they had multiple choices to make in the survey. It means that obviously people don't just pick 1 or 2 metrics, they use a number of them. Actually, the average number of KPIs used is above 5 for all teams. Right, so comparing the two, dev relations and dev marketing. So the dev marketing people focus heavily on web-based metrics, like such as page or video views, unique visitors, social media followers, and so on. However, the dev relation people, they go deeper. So 1 level down the funnel, if you like. And they focus more on usage, like registered developers, product usage, and then, more importantly and interestingly, in my opinion, they also measure sentiment. So they measure satisfaction, developer satisfaction scores, and NPS. So you see the metrics are very different. There's only one they have the 2 groups have in common, and it's, let's say, the golden standard, so monthly active users. Through API analytics or telemetry. So yes, that applies to both, but otherwise they use different metrics. Therefore, depending in which team you're in, it would be better to use different KPIs, because marketing has to do with just creating the buzz and bringing, I don't know, marketing leads, let's say. While dev relations, it's about actually the relation. Is there a relation there? So usage, and is it a good relation? Do they love us or hate us, kind of thing. Okay, and with that, I'm going to the last topic that has to do with segmenting developers and differentiating your strategy. So first of all, regional differentiation. So we asked our survey takers whether or not they differentiate their strategy by region. So, excuse me, nearly half, so 43% said that their program is global and they do not differentiate geographically. Another 23 said that they just focus on their home market. The globe reach is just a nice to have. So for those 23, fine, it could be that home market is their market and they shouldn't, it's relevant for them to look beyond that, okay? But those who do have a global program, we would recommend going into geographic differentiation. We have seen again and again and again that developers from different regions have different needs. Localization, for example, is important in some areas. East Asia, for example, while it's not in Europe and North America. Certification is usually important in South Asia, not elsewhere. So there are different things that you should focus on in different regions. Now, suppose you do decide to have regional differentiation. What do you do? There are different stages of that, different flavors if you prefer. So the perhaps easiest or the first step would be to localize your content without otherwise geographically differentiating your services or outreach. So 10% of the practitioners do that. Then the next step would be to have a centralized team, so no regional teams, but differentiate your services by region. And another nearly 10% do that. And of course, the ultimate stage is to have, the most expensive obviously, is to have regional teams in place. Now, if you are a smaller program, if you represent a smaller program, a smaller budget, and you do want to differentiate regionally, what this says here is that you don't have to jump into the most expensive option day one. You can start, easy and ease your way to into regional differentiation. So you can start by localizing your content, perhaps for the regions where it matters, to save yourself some pointless money spent elsewhere. And then move on to differentiating your services by carefully looking into which services matter where the most. And finally, if it makes sense for you to have regional teams in place. It's not, however, only regional differentiation you should consider. You should also consider segmenting your audience overall. So we asked dev program leaders whether they segment their audience. Sadly, we found that 1 in 4 does not. That's a lot higher than previous findings. And again, to me, this is a sign, this stems from the smaller companies or those who have just started the journey building a developer program that don't yet realize the importance of segmentation. They'll get there, I hope. Our research has shown over the years, again, we've been doing that for over a decade now, and again, we find that it does make a difference to segment your audience. Developers, there's no such thing as an average developer. You have all sorts, from really experienced people to just hobbyists and people who just want to play around with, explore new opportunities and so on. So you cannot possibly all put them in the same bag. And depending on the sector you're in, and if it's an emerging sector, it's a different kind of people who are into that one as compared to a mature sector. So you should segment. We strongly recommend it. If you do, so those who are actually segmenting, they tend to use technology to do so. Technology considerations such as programming language, as you see, sticks out here, or the type of development, web, mobile, and so on. Target audience. It's good to see that this time around, some demographics, 7 demographics, have made it to the middle of this rank, at least. So role, age, experience, and so on is finally there. It used to be at the bottom of the list. But then again, we see devices, operating systems, and so on represented there, being quite popular. We strongly advise against using technology in your segment definition. Technologies change over time. There are many problems, many issues with using either technologies or revenues with segmenting. We have another webinar that we ran about a year ago on this, and we'll gladly send you a link to that one to listen to the recording if you like. On how we would advise you to segment developers, not just hand you over a model. You should be able to build your own model. We've just discussed methodology. Okay, so final note is that, as I said, we also ask developers about what they value in developer programs. And we strongly believe, we do so because we strongly believe that you should really know your developers before embarking into a journey of a developer program, building a developer community. You need to understand your audience. And so that you can engage them in the way they expect you to, which will, of course, increase your the return on your investments. And we ask developers, therefore, what they value, what they expect from you, what they value in the developer program. We ask them the resources of which vendors they use out of a list of 20 leading programs. And then we ask them to score each of the vendors that they're using, each of the programs that they're using, with respect to the those attributes, those services, such as documentation, training, mentoring, and so on, that they consider important. So using this data and putting everything together, along with everything else that we track in that survey, we answer several key questions for you. So what they value, which attributes, program attributes, have the highest return on your investments, so which ones you should focus on for your particular audience, how you could justify your program, so giving you a way to measure developer worth, and then also point you to the best practice leaders per program attribute again, so who you should be looking up to with respect to, say, webinars or documentation or whatever else. So all of that is packaged in our developer program benchmarking research. The new version is about to be published in a few days. There's a link there. Again, don't bother with the link. It will be in your deck. And yes, that's all I had to say for today. Any questions, please?
Christina, we do have a question that from the audience. Stephen from Semtech actually asked, what are the best practices on how to calculate the value of onboardings developers when you aren't offering a service or API surface area that you can monitor?
Sorry, I didn't catch the last bit. When you're not?
When you are not offering a service or API surface that you can monitor. So if you're not offering an API service that you can monitor, you know, the users or how many calls they have or something like that. I mean, how else can you, what are the other best practices on how to calculate the value of onboardings?
Yeah, so the rule of thumb that applies to everything is that, okay, somehow you measure your sales. What are you selling? You're selling something to developers, and how is that related to the number of developers that you have? So the idea is to link the value of your product to per developer, and also then understand how many developers you need to onboard to actually translate, to actually have a unit sale of whatever it is you're offering. So I wouldn't be able to offer more specifics if I didn't know the specific case, but that's the general rule. You just trying to understand day one, the initial sale, and then because we're talking about lifetime value here, we usually have models that predict how a developer's relation is going to evolve with you and what they're going to bring during their lifetime. And usually when you have multiple offerings of some sort, you, depending on where they onboarded, so what they bought first, let's say, you get to see how that grows, what else they bring. A difficult case is when you only have, so you're not selling stuff to developers, but the developers are selling your, so it's a network effect kind of thing where they're selling your technology to others. So there is just, you need to say, translate the final users that you have at the end of the day for your product or platform by the developers, the active developers that you have. But that's quite vague, I understand. It has to, every case is quite different, but that's the baseline. That's the general idea.
Stephen has a follow-ups to that, actually. Stephen, you can unmute yourself, I think, now if you'd like to respond, because while you were typing, Christina was continuing. Let me know if you,
Can you
you're able
mute?
to unmute yourself.
Hang on, there's something in the chat though. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is in the chat. So he's responded, but how do you make that link between, it was when we were talking about, the value of a developer versus
So
the
that's
lifetime
network
value.
effects.
Yeah, and that's what you were also saying. If they sell radios to customers and not to developers influence, but they don't buy. How can we know the developers that are influencing or engage the developers? I believe that's what we're trying to say.
Yes.
Marketing codes don't work well.
Yeah, so that's what I said about measuring network effects. There's a whole theory around that. So basically, you need to understand how the two are correlated. The number of developers that you onboard, how is that growing, and how's that growth correlate to how your users are growing, correcting for everything else that you can correct. And so that's how you, at the end of the day, the developers are your multipliers, right? They multiply your sales. They're sort of your advocates out there. Yeah, that's the general, let's say, methodology. Again, understand it's very vague. It has to be very specific depending on the case. But in general, you try to correlate the number of developers that you engage with the number of the products that you sell at the end of the day. If you have in between numbers, that's fine as to how many apps or whatever else units that the developers are selling. But yeah, that's the general idea.
I mean, so what we're understanding, just to sort of help in that, it's really specific per case is what you're saying, and that we would really need to dig into each case and understand product scenario and understand the numbers behind usage, access, and sales.
Yeah, it depends what sort of metrics you have, but it's all about measuring the network effects. So it's a multiplying factors there involved. It depends how many dots in between you can join, how many data points you have between the final product and the developer that has actually you can attribute that sale to the developer, how well you can link the two.
And then you would build a model and use that model moving forward and try to validate it as time moves forward.
Yeah, because how big of a multiplier its developer is in your network, it can change during his lifetime.
Indeed, yeah.
So yeah, that's why it's a lifetime value. You need to estimate that.
So short answer, that is data. The more data you can collect,
of course,
historically, you can create those models. It's the story of our life. Get the data, and then you can build a model to help you estimate what that is and sort of create that. So
but Stephen, happy to pick up this conversation offline if you want.
Yeah, definitely. Stephen or anyone, if you have these questions, we can definitely have a call and chat further. We do have another question. Sorry, guys. I'm going to go into the next one. Emmeline Wang, with so many free plans and access during COVID, there's a lot of noise. What do you do, or what do you recommend to get the right audience?
So yeah, sorry, I was bringing up the beginning. Was something about COVID-19?
With so many free plans and access during COVID, and it's a lot of noise. Yeah. What do you recommend to get the right audience?
To get the right audience, or to get the right content to your audience?
To get to the right audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
it's something we do in the benchmarking type studies, right?
Exactly. So you have to figure out, first of all, you have to define theoretically what your audience is and who you need to get to. You will always have, so what the situation will do is that it will increase the number of curious people for technologies that have a really low barrier to entry, right? So I don't expect this will increase, for example, the number of backend developers in any way, but it will increase the number of game developers, right? So depending what your audience is, you need to be stricter, let's say, on defining who you want to focus on. And then for that audience, you have to figure out what is important to them. Excuse me. And it could be that in this particular situation, it's not about the content per se, but what I am guessing, so I'm betting my money for the next survey, that what will surface is that they're looking for more support, more guidance, rather than content per se, right? Because they are, I mean, they must be, I don't know, lost and drowned in all the content that people and digital events or other that people are throwing at them at this point, or opportunities or ideas, what they can do, how they can take advantage of the whole situation. So guidance would be my bet here. So first of all, decide what your audience is. If you, and in some cases, this might be really trivial and you may know already. In some cases, it may not, because it may not be just those who do have access to your products, but those who, especially now, are coming into the space and are maybe trying their luck. So you have to decide, who you want to attract. And then for that profile, figure out what is important, and simple messaging, mostly guiding them, I would say, support rather than content per se.
That's interesting. Interesting thoughts. We're at 51. I think we have less than 10 minutes left, but I will give a few more minutes if something else comes up. For those who do not see this chat for some reason, the recordings will be shared afterwards, so we will be sending that over to you. And so you will get access to this if you've missed any part of it. Christina, I think before we close, one of my favorite things to do and ask you is, was there anything that surprised you? Or what do you think, like if everyone here and those that came in later, if they took away something from this, was sort of the one thing that they should take away?
Well, let me go back to my favorite. This one, I would say. So effort and money go in different things. So that's one. And the effort there's more effort on the supportive stuff. So that's interesting to me. And also, given what's happening now, again, it's always, I find conferences are just stuck on that right-hand corner there. Yes, we're not saying you should not be having conferences. They're there for a reason, but it's not at the top of the list of developers. So every single time that we do this, my favorite part is looking at this chart and seeing whether alignment has improved or not, and what still remains neglected by developer programs, and answers in public forums remains one, sadly. So yeah, that's my favorite bit. When you decide on where to invest your money and effort, keep in mind what developers want. They do not seem to have the same priorities as you do in terms of investments. So yeah, that's my favorite bit.
Thank you, Christina. The one thing on that slide, sorry, going back to the, I'm noticing that the document, the first top ones are much closer to that line than they used to be in previous reports. They were very different. Just giving everyone some feedback. I feel that we're being heard by the industry, at least by those who answered the survey, that this was a very different view a few years ago.
Indeed, yes, that was one of my comments too, that the alignment is improvement. See, much with developer priorities is improvement. That's exactly it. That for the core activities, there seems to be some agreement. So yeah, that's definitely good news. It's just that there's room for improvement. And yeah.
All right. Then if that's okay with everyone, I don't see any further questions. I think we can close here and give you guys a few extra minutes for at least a short break before you move on to the rest of your day. Thank you all for joining, and hope to see you in our next events.
Okay, thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.